A mother's reckoning, the price of being forgotten. My 3 children came together to tell me some news. "Mom, we've arranged a long-term care home for you. You'll be looked after there. There are folks your age, you'll have company." I packed my suitcase without shedding a single tear. Listen to my story until the end and then tell me from which province you're watching this. I'd like to know how far this story has traveled. My name is Margaret Patterson, and I'm 72 years old. For most of my life, I believed that a mother's greatest treasure was her children. But I eventually learned in the hardest, most painful way that to my children, I was nothing more than an expense they no longer wanted to carry. It all began on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. The pale winter sunlight filtered through the living room window of my Toronto home, scattering soft squares of light across the dust in the air. I was making coffee, that familiar aroma filling the house, and bringing back memories of the days when laughter still echoed here. When my children walked in, all 3 of them together, which almost never happened. Robert, my eldest, 50 years old, his face carved with lines of worry, though never the kind of worry meant for me. Jennifer, my middle child, 47, always trying to please everyone, but never truly pleasing anyone, not even herself. And Michael, the youngest at 42 to me, he would always be that gentle little boy who needed his mother to shield him from the world. They came in and sat down on the old plaid sofa, the one my late husband had spent a whole year paying off in installments. They exchanged glances, that silent language only siblings understand. Then Robert, as always, was the first to speak. "Mom, we need to talk about something serious." He adjusted his collar as if it were strangling him. I already felt something bad was coming. A mother's instinct is never wrong. I thought perhaps one of them needed money again, or maybe Jennifer's marriage was falling apart. I set the coffee pot on the table beside the ceramic mugs I only used when guests came. "Go on, kids. What is it?" Jennifer took my hand, eyes glistening. Her palms were soft, so unlike mine, rough and stained, the marks of a lifetime of work. "Mom, this is for your own good," she said. That phrase, "for your own good," always marked the beginning of something terrible. Michael kept his head down, staring at a worn spot in the carpet. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "Mom, we don't think you can live alone anymore. It's dangerous. The other day you forgot to turn off the stove." "I didn't forget, Michael," I replied, forcing my voice to stay steady, even as my chest tightened. "The burner went out because of a draft. That's all." "It doesn't matter," Robert interrupted. "What matters is you're getting older and you need proper care. We all work full-time. We can't watch over you. So, we've made a decision. We found a great place for you." "A place?" My heart clenched. I looked around the little living room, the wedding photo, the fern by the window, each object tied to a moment of my life. This was my home, the only place I truly belonged. "It's a long-term care facility, Mom," Robert said bluntly, like throwing a punch. "It's called Maple Ridge Retirement Home. You'll have people your age, nurses on duty 24 hours a day, activities." I stopped hearing his words. His voice faded into a distant hum. A care home, a home for the forgotten. So that's what I had become, a burden, an old piece of furniture they no longer knew where to put. So they decided to donate me. I looked at their faces one by one. Robert cold, calculating, treating this like a problem to be solved. Jennifer crying. But those were tears of guilt, not sorrow. And Michael, when he finally raised his head, what I saw in his eyes broke me completely. Relief. Relief that he would no longer have to care for his aging mother. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. A part of me shattered quietly. Another part, stronger, sharper, began to rise. I took a deep breath and asked calmly, "So, when do I leave?" They exchanged glances, startled by my composure. "Probably this weekend, Mom. Saturday would work," Robert said. "All right," I answered. "Now if you'll excuse me, my coffee is getting cold." They left my house with the ease of people who had just pulled a rotten tooth. I stayed behind, watching the light fade across the floor of the home that was no longer mine. Memories rushed back. I remembered the day David, my husband, left. He didn't die. He simply packed his bags one Monday morning and said he'd found a younger woman, that life with me had become dull, and he deserved to be happy. I was 35 then. Robert was 13, Jennifer 10, and Michael only 5. 3 children, rent to pay, a broken heart. I worked as a seamstress from home, barely earning enough, so I swallowed my pride and took cleaning jobs in the wealthy neighborhoods nearby Rosedale, Forest Hill. Up at 4 a.m., cleaning Mrs. Henderson's house in the morning, then Mrs. Campbell's in the afternoon, coming home late, exhausted, yet still cooking dinner, checking homework, bathing Michael. Many nights I ate just a slice of toast and coffee so my kids could have enough rice. My hands cracked from bleach, my knees ached, my body shrank, but I never complained. Looking at my children gave me strength. I remembered when Robert wanted to study automotive technology at George Brown College, but I didn't have the tuition money. I sold the thin gold ring my mother left me. When he graduated and brought me his first paycheck, he said, "Mom, buy yourself a new ring." I cried with pride, but used that money to pay the hydro bill instead. I remembered Jennifer's sweet 16. She dreamed of a sparkly dress for her party. I spent 3 months sewing late at night to save every penny. When she twirled in that dress at her party at the community center, I knew every sacrifice was worth it. And Michael, my baby, when he wanted to open a small auto repair shop, I gave him every dollar I'd saved through years of scrubbing floors. "This is for you to start your life," I told him. He hugged me and said I was the best mom in the world. His shop thrived. He married, had kids. Jennifer became a store manager at Canadian Tire. Robert ran a garage. I thought I had raised 3 good people, successful, responsible, loving. But as the memories faded, a cold anger took their place. Not the kind that blinds, the kind that clarifies. They had forgotten everything, the ring, the sleepless nights, the sacrifices. To them, it was just a mother's duty. In that moment of quiet rage, I thought of Mrs. Campbell. She wasn't just an employer. She was a widow with no children, living alone in a big house in Forest Hill. At first, I was just her cleaner. But slowly, she started inviting me for tea. She told me stories about her late husband, her travels to Victoria and the Maritimes, her loneliness. I told her about my kids, my worries. We became friends, soulmates really. I worked for her for over 20 years. Even after she retired, I still visited 3 times a week, not as her maid, but as her friend. I helped with errands, read the Toronto Star when her eyesight failed, listen to her favorite CBC radio programs. My children never understood. "Mom, you've worked your whole life. Why still take care of that old woman?" Jennifer once asked. They never knew I went there for friendship, not duty. 6 months ago, Mrs. Campbell passed away just before my children decided to plan my future. After the funeral, I received a call from Mr. Harrison Thompson, her solicitor. He invited me to his office on Bay Street, saying Mrs. Campbell had left a will. I thought it might be a keepsake, a piece of jewelry perhaps, but when he read it, my heart nearly stopped. She had left me everything: her mansion in Forest Hill, 2 rental properties in the annex, her late husband's company shares, and a large sum in the bank, over $2 million. I stammered, saying, "It must be a mistake." But Mr. Thompson handed me a handwritten letter. "To Margaret, the only family I have left. You cared for me when the world forgot me. You gave me what money could not buy: time and kindness. Use this gift to live for yourself, to rest, and to be happy. You deserve it more than anyone. With love, Eleanor." I left his office in a daze. I didn't tell my children. Why? Because Jennifer was right about one thing: money changes everything. They would see me differently, treat me differently. I wanted to believe there was still genuine love somewhere inside them. But that night, sitting alone on the worn-out sofa, freshly sentenced to be abandoned, I realized fate had a dark sense of humor. They wanted to get rid of the poor old woman, not knowing she was now wealthier than all 3 of them combined. My anger turned into a plan. I wouldn't yell or flaunt the money or wave the will in their faces. I would do exactly what they wanted. I would move into Maple Ridge. I stood up, opened the closet, and took out the small suitcase I used when babysitting at Jennifer's house. I packed a few clothes, a pair of slippers, a toothbrush, no photos. At the very bottom drawer, beneath folded underwear, I placed the thick folder Mr. Thompson had given me, my treasure, my secret, my weapon. On Saturday morning they arrived right on time. I was already waiting, suitcase by my side. "Ready, Mom?" Jennifer asked, avoiding my eyes. "Yes," I said. Robert lifted the suitcase, surprised by how light it was. Michael held my arm as if I were fragile glass. I walked with them to the door, glanced around the home one last time, the walls that had heard my laughter and my tears. I didn't cry. I sat in the back seat of Robert's SUV alone. They talked up front about work, about the maple leafs, about everything except where they were taking me. I watched the familiar Toronto neighborhood slip away through the window. They thought they were driving me toward my ending, not knowing they were escorting me straight to the lesson they would never forget. The place they called Maple Ridge smelled of cheap disinfectant mixed with old sorrow, a scent that clung to both clothes and soul. The walls, once white, were now stained yellow with nicotine and mold near the ceiling, like maps of places no one wished to visit. The only sound was the blaring TV turned up too loud, some daytime talk show filled with forced laughter that didn't match the blank faces of the elderly residents sitting in plastic chairs along the corridor. My children guided me through that hallway as if they were giving me a tour of a luxury hotel. "Look, Mom, they even have cable TV," Jennifer said, pointing to the obvious, her false enthusiasm almost painful to hear. Robert, ever the practical one, went straight to the reception desk where a woman in a white uniform, about 60, was buried in a Sudoku puzzle. "We're here to drop off Mrs. Margaret Patterson," he said. Without looking up, she replied flatly, "Room 12. You'll share with Mrs. Dubois. She doesn't talk much. She won't bother you." She won't bother you. That's what I had become, someone who shouldn't bother anyone. Michael, my youngest, carried my tiny suitcase as if it weighed a ton. He still couldn't meet my eyes. We walked down the hall to room 12. The door was open. Inside were 2 iron beds, a dented metal locker, and a small barred window facing a brick wall. On one bed sat a frail woman with thin white hair, staring blankly into space. That must have been Mrs. Dubois. "Well, Mom, you're all set," Robert said, in the same tone he used when dropping off a car at the mechanic. "We've got a lot to do, so we'll get going." They placed my suitcase beside the empty bed. Jennifer leaned in for a quick hug, the kind given out of obligation. "Call us if you need anything, okay, Mom?" she whispered, but I knew she didn't mean it. "We'll visit whenever we can." Michael was last. He finally looked at me, and for a moment I saw the 5-year-old boy clinging to my skirt again. His eyes filled with tears, but he swallowed them. "Take care, Mom," he said softly. Then they left. I stood motionless in the middle of the room, listening to their footsteps fade down the hall. I didn't look back. I didn't beg to go with them. The door was open. I could have followed. But why? To plead for a place in the lives of those who had already erased me? No. That woman, the weak one, had died that Tuesday afternoon in her own home. I closed the door. The click of the lock was the loneliest sound I had ever heard. I turned to Mrs. Dubois. "Good afternoon," I said softly. She kept staring at the wall. Maybe she truly couldn't speak. Or maybe she had learned that here, silence was the safest company. I sat on my bed. The springs groaned. The mattress was so thin I could feel the metal beneath. I opened my suitcase. On top were a few old clothes. Beneath them lay the thick folder with every document of Eleanor's inheritance, a quiet reminder that I was no longer as powerless as they believed. Meanwhile, in the SUV, the air felt strangely lighter. Robert drove with both hands gripping the wheel, knuckles white. Jennifer in the passenger seat finally let her tears fall. "I feel like a monster," she sobbed. "Stop it, Jennifer," Robert said, eyes fixed on the road. "We did what had to be done. Mom couldn't live alone anymore. We saved her from herself." "But that place, Robert, it's so depressing," she murmured, wiping her cheeks. "It's what we can afford, all right? Or did you want a luxury retirement residence at $5,000 a month? Who's paying for that, eh? You? I've got university tuition for the kids. Mortgage payments, life isn't cheap." From the back seat, Michael finally spoke. "What about her house?" Robert and Jennifer exchanged a glance. It was exactly what all 3 of them had been thinking. "I've already done the math," Robert said, his tone softening when he mentioned money. "I've got a buddy who's a real estate agent. He says property values in that neighborhood are going up fast. Leslieville's hot right now. If we sell soon, we could make a good profit." "Sell?" Jennifer asked quietly. "But that's Mom's house. Her things are still in there." "And they'll just rot if we leave them," Robert replied. "Be realistic, Jennifer. We need the money. I've got some debts at the garage. Michael needs funds for his shop, and I'm sure you know what to do with your share. We'll clean out the house, donate some old stuff, and sell. Split the money evenly, $250,000 each. Maybe more. Are you sure about this? Michael asked. Of course. 1/3 each, fair and square. After all, we've taken care of her all these years. Fair. If only they knew that the house they were planning to sell was built on my sweat and tears. I don't know, Robert, Jennifer murmured. Going through Mom's things feels wrong. What's wrong is letting the house sit empty and lose value, he shot back. Think about it, Jennifer. With $250,000, you could get a new car, pay off your credit cards, maybe even take that trip to Vancouver you keep talking about. Just think. Next week, we'll meet up, clean everything out, and list it for sale. The sooner the better. A heavy silence filled the car. The plan had been set. They weren't just abandoning me. They were erasing me, selling the very walls that held my memories to pay off their own debts. And I, in that dim room at Maple Ridge, began my own quiet investigation. That first night was the longest of my life. Coughs echoed from other rooms. Soft groans drifted through the hallway, and the nurse's shoes clacked endlessly on the linoleum floor. I couldn't sleep. At dawn, when the first pale light crept in, I was already awake, sitting still in the dark, listening, thinking. I observed. Breakfast was watery porridge. Lunch was thin soup. The staff was overworked and distant. No one had time for a kind word. The elderly residents here each lived in their own silent world of fading memories and quiet loneliness. I didn't isolate myself. I walked the halls with a gentle smile and slightly stooped posture, playing the part of the sweet, harmless old lady. I chatted with the cleaning staff, the kitchen workers, always offering compliments. This place is spotless, or lunch was delicious today. Starved for kindness, they slowly opened up. It was Rita, the housekeeper, who first revealed something important. This place used to be great, Mrs. Margaret, she said while sweeping. The old owner was kind, but he sold it. The new owner only cares about money-cutting staff, cheaper food, doesn't care about anyone here. Who's the new owner? I asked, feigning innocence. Some company name's real long. Something like Northern Care Holdings. Never seen the owner. Just some manager called Dr. Morris, who comes once a month to collect the money. Northern Care Holdings. I memorized the name. In the days that followed, I stayed in character. I joined the watercolor class with expired paint, played bingo for Timbits, and watched hockey games with the others, pretending to pay attention. Slowly, the residents began to talk. I met Mr. Sullivan, a retired history teacher placed here by his son after his wife passed. They said they'd visit every Sunday, he told me, eyes distant, but I guess their weeks are longer than 7 days. I met Mrs. LeBlanc, who suffered from Alzheimer's and spent her days calling out for her son Francois, who never came. Each story was another fragment of a forgotten life, and with each one, my resolve grew stronger. I would do this not just for me, but for all of them. A week after I arrived, I told a nurse I felt dizzy and needed to call my daughter to bring my medication. She led me to the old rotary phone at the reception desk. I dialed. Jennifer picked up. "Mom, what's wrong? Are you okay?" Her voice carried a hint of worry, almost convincing. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little high blood pressure. Bring me my medicine when you visit, will you?" I said in the weak voice I'd practiced. "Of course, Mom, but this weekend might be tough. Your brothers and I will be at your house organizing things." "Organizing?" I repeated. "Yes, Mom. Don't worry. We'll take care of everything." I hung up. My heart turned to ice. So I had been right. They were beginning the process of selling the house, cleaning out my things, throwing away my memories in exchange for cash. But strangely, I was calm. I wasn't in a hurry. I had a plan and, more importantly, the means to carry it out. I dialed another number. "Mr. Thompson," I said softly, turning my back to the reception desk. "Mrs. Patterson, I was about to call you. Your children contacted me last week asking about your late husband's assets. I told them exactly what you instructed, that there's nothing left." "Good. Now, I need you to help me with something discreet." "What do you need?" he asked. "2 things. First, find out everything about Northern Care Holdings. Who's behind it? What business they're in? Any scandals? And especially whether they plan to sell this nursing home." There was a pause. "Are you planning to buy it, Mrs. Patterson?" he asked, surprised. "That's just the beginning, Mr. Thompson," I replied, gazing down the hallway where poor Mrs. LeBlanc was still calling out to her invisible son. "Second, I want you to hire someone to appraise my house thoroughly, every brick, every window. I need to know exactly how much it's worth. My children are getting ready to sell it as if it were theirs." "And what will you do with that appraisal?" he asked. I smiled, a smile no one in Maple Ridge could see. "I'm going to buy my own house back, Mr. Thompson. But they don't need to know who the buyer is. Not yet." That Saturday morning, the sky was gray and damp, typical Toronto November weather. At Maple Ridge, I ate my usual thin oatmeal, chatted briefly with Mr. Sullivan about how the Leafs had lost again, then sat by the barred window, picturing what must be happening at my old home. I could see it all so clearly in my mind. Robert arrived first. He unlocked the door with the key I never imagined would be used to erase my presence from that house. He walked through the living room like a businessman, studying and evaluating, deciding what to keep, what to discard. Moments later, Jennifer and Michael arrived, carrying cardboard boxes from Canadian Tire and large black garbage bags. "Where should we start?" Jennifer asked, her voice trembling as she looked at the old plaid sofa, the same one where she had once sat to pronounce my sentence. "Start with the living room," Robert said coldly. "This stuff's worthless. The sofa's broken, the bookshelves full of termites. We'll donate it all to Value Village. Clear the space so we can work. Just get rid of Mom's clutter." "Don't say that, Robert," Jennifer whispered. "Those are Mom's memories." "Memories?" he scoffed. "You mean junk?" The realtor was clear. "Empty houses sell faster. Clean, sell, get cash their money." The words echoed in my mind like a blade twisting deep inside me. Michael was assigned to take down the framed photos. Each one was a wound my wedding picture, their baptism photos, Michael in his hockey gear at his 7th birthday party. He looked at each for a few seconds, his face twisting briefly with guilt, then gently, too gently, placed them into a box. Robert, like an executioner, yanked open drawers and found my sewing box. "Look at this. Needles, thread, buttons, all old junk, trash." He tossed everything into a black garbage bag. He never knew those same needles had mended his school uniforms for years, so he wouldn't be teased for holes. Those buttons came from the dresses I sewed through endless nights just to pay for Jennifer's sweet 16 party. Jennifer opened my old scrapbook filled with greeting cards I'd collected. "Oh my God, Mom kept all these," she said with an awkward, pitying laugh. "How quaint," Robert sneered. "Throw it out. Nobody's buying a house full of sentimental garbage." But maybe Mom would want to keep Jennifer started. For what? To gather dust under her iron bed at the nursing home? Get real. The goal is to clean everything out. He clapped his hands like a foreman giving orders. That cleansing went on all day. They moved to my bedroom, the most sacred place of my life. Jennifer pulled clothes from the cramped closet. "This one's out of style, donate it. This one's too old, toss it." "Agreed," Robert added. They had no idea the faded floral dress was the one I wore on my first date with their father, or that old wool sweater had kept me warm on freezing nights waiting for the streetcar after work. The cruelest moment came when Michael opened a drawer and found my mother's old recipe notebooks. The leather covers were cracked, the pages yellowed, the handwriting delicate recipes passed down through generations. Tourtière, Nanaimo bars, butter tarts, bannock. "What's this?" Robert asked, picking one up. "Grandma's recipe books," Michael said quietly. Robert flipped through them carelessly. Messy handwriting, greasy pages. "Who uses this stuff anymore? Everything's online. Trash it." "No, Robert," Michael said softly, his voice hesitant but firm for once. "Mom loved these. And what's she going to cook at the nursing home? Thin soup? Don't slow us down. Throw them out." Michael froze, clutching the notebooks. For a fleeting second I had hope. But then he looked at his brother, saw Robert's cold eyes, and that hope died. He lowered his head and gently placed the notebooks into the black garbage bag. I sat on my bed at Maple Ridge, eyes closed. That moment hurt more than the day they left me there. They hadn't just thrown away a few old notebooks. They had discarded our family's history. Just then, the phone rang. It was Mr. Thompson. I stepped into the quiet hallway to answer. "Mrs. Patterson, I have news," he said in his steady professional tone. "I looked into Northern Care Holdings. It's just a shell company. The real owner is a man named Andrew Morris, the same Mr. Zodiac. Morris, Rita mentioned. I said, that's right, and here's the interesting part, he's drowning in debt. He's mortgaged Maple Ridge and several other properties. The banks are about to foreclose. He's desperate to sell for quick cash. A cold smile spread across my lips. Excellent news, Mr. Thompson. Make him a low offer. Act like you're doing him a favor. Right away. Oh, and about your house? The appraiser finished. Given its current condition and location in Leslieville, the minimum value is about $850,000. Far more than they'd ever imagined. Calm filled my heart. Perfect, I said. When they list it for sale, form a shell company under a trusted employee's name and make an immediate offer of $475,000 cash. Mr. Thompson whistled softly. That's pretty low, Mrs. Patterson. They might refuse. They won't, I said confidently. They're drowning in debt, desperate for quick money, and Robert's real estate buddy will definitely undervalue it to get his commission faster. $475,000 cash will sound like a miracle. 2 weeks passed. I continued my act as the sweet old lady at the nursing home. None of them visited. Jennifer called once saying, the cleanup was exhausting but almost done. She never mentioned the black trash bags filled with my life. The next Saturday, Mrs. O'Brien, my dear old neighbor, came to visit my first real visitor. She brought a warm loaf of banana bread baked from my mother's very own recipe. Tears welled in my eyes, but I held them back. Margaret, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, she said, holding my hand. They put the for sale sign up today. I know, Dorothy, I expected it. They threw away so much of your stuff, Margaret. Seeing those garbage bags on the curb broke my heart. Mine too, I said with a sad smile. But sometimes a heart has to break into 1,000 pieces before it can be put back together stronger. That afternoon I called Mr. Thompson. The sign's up. Proceed. 3 days later, the phone rang at Jennifer's house. Robert shouted in excitement. Jennifer, you won't believe it. Someone bought Mom's house. What? The sign's only been up for 3 days. Exactly. Some real estate investment company. And get this, they're paying cash. $475,000. $475,000? But your agent said at least $650,000. Yeah, if we wanted to wait months, maybe a year. $475,000 now. No open houses, no delays. It's perfect. Michael agreed too. Split 3 ways. That's almost $160,000 each, Robert said, thrilled. Jennifer thought about a new kitchen, her old Civic falling apart, the trip to BC she hadn't had in 5 years. Her guilt slowly drowned beneath her greed. If you both agree, then so do I, she said. Great. I'll tell the agent. Get the champagne ready, sis. Our problems are finally over. But they didn't know when Robert shouted, Our problems are over. The real problem had only just begun. That night, in the dining hall of Maple Ridge, I sipped a spoonful of bland soup, thinking about my house. Soon it would legally belong to me again. My children would have the money they craved, but in truth, it was my money from the inheritance Eleanor had left me. They would spend it, pay their debts, and bask in the illusion of victory. As for me, I would wait. Patience is the virtue of those who have scrubbed floors, and the quiet strength of those preparing to reclaim justice. The next morning, Mr. Thompson called back. Mrs. Patterson, I have news. Mr. Andrew Morris has agreed to sell Maple Ridge at a very low price to pay off his debts. The place is now yours. I looked around the shabby room, the yellowed walls, the iron bed, and Mrs. Dubois staring blankly at the brick wall. The place my children had sent me to end my life now belonged to me. At first, I counted every bowl of thin porridge, every sleepless night, every time someone was visited, someone who wasn't me. But then I stopped counting days and began counting victories. The first victory happened quietly, signed in a notary's office I never needed to enter. My 3 children, dressed neatly, signed the papers selling my house to the shell company Mr. Thompson had arranged. He told me they looked as happy as kids on Christmas morning. From my small room at Maple Ridge, I smiled faintly, knowing my plan was unfolding exactly as intended. 2 years passed. Michael, my youngest, seemed to have forgotten all about guilt. He kept talking about buying a new car lift for his repair shop. My 3 children had received $475,000 from selling the house, one that was worth nearly twice that, and the money, ironically, came from Eleanor's inheritance to me. They thought they were the smartest people in the world. From my small room at Maple Ridge, I smiled at the thought they had just sold their lunch to buy their dinner. As expected, the money burned quickly in their hands. Robert, who always complained about debts, didn't pay off a cent. Instead, he bought a used F-150 big and loud to show off to his customers, then replaced all his garage tools with the most expensive kind from Princess Auto. He started eating lunch at fancy restaurants on King West, acting like a self-made millionaire. Jennifer fulfilled her dream of a perfect kitchen. She hired a designer, tore everything down, installed granite countertops from Home Depot, bought a Sub-Zero fridge, and a 6-burner Wolf range. Of course, the Reno cost far more than her $160,000 share. To finish it, she took out another bank loan. But Jennifer was happy, posting photos of her new kitchen on Facebook, collecting compliments from friends who knew nothing of the truth. And Michael, my youngest, my once tender-hearted boy, hurt me the most. He not only bought the new lift for his shop, but also traded his wife's Honda for a new CR-V and financed a trip to the Muskoka cottage country for his family. He spent every penny, as if that money were the start of a life of luxury. Not one of them thought to save anything. Not one thought of me. For the first 6 months, none of them visited once. They were too busy living their new shiny lives. Occasionally, Jennifer called, always with the same excuse. "Mom, I'm so sorry I haven't been by. The kitchen reno is chaos dust everywhere, but when it's done, I'll bring you some butter tarts from my new oven. I promise." The butter tarts, of course, never came. While they burned through the money from my house, I began my own renovation of Maple Ridge. Now that it was mine, I could do whatever I pleased. But my kind of revenge wasn't loud. It was like stitching done from the inside, seen only when the work is finished. I continued living like an ordinary resident. No one, not the staff, not the other seniors, suspected a thing. Mr. Thompson, on my behalf, hired a new administrator named Sophie, a 50-year-old widow from Ottawa who had cared for her mother with Alzheimer's for 10 years. She had both a warm heart and a spine of steel, the perfect combination. Sophie arrived on a Monday morning, introduced as the new manager sent by the new owners. The first thing she did was remove Dr. Morris, the greedy director who had been running the place, and Evelyn, the head nurse who treated the elderly like sacks of potatoes. I sat quietly in my plastic chair, pretending to nap, but I saw everything. Dr. Morris's jaw nearly hit the floor when Sophie handed him his termination papers. The second thing she did at my request was change the meals. The next morning, instead of watery porridge, we had fresh bagels from Street, Lawrence Market, butter, scrambled eggs, and real coffee from Tim Hortons. At lunch, instead of thin soup, there was roasted chicken with mashed potatoes, green beans, and a Caesar salad. The dining room was silent, but it was no longer the silence of resignation, it was disbelief. Mr. Sullivan, sitting across from me, had tears in his eyes. "It's been 5 years since I've tasted chicken this good, Margaret." I just smiled. The improvements continued. Sophie hired more PSWs, more cleaners. The walls were repainted a soft cream color. The old plastic chairs in the hallway were replaced with cushioned seats donated by an anonymous company. Burned-out lights were replaced, bathrooms repaired. Maple Ridge was finally living up to its name. I became Sophie's secret advisor. At night, when everyone slept, I'd visit her small office and we'd talk. "Sophie, Mrs. LeBlanc needs a new mattress. Hers is sagging. Or Mr. Sullivan loves checkers. Maybe we can get a few boards." And the next day, everything was done. To everyone else, I was just sweet Mrs. Margaret, the gentle old lady the manager adored. But in truth, Sophie and I were rebuilding this place together. We started real activities. Once a week, a young musician came to play guitar and sing old Gordon Lightfoot songs. Bingo nights now offered boxes of Laura Secord chocolates. We bought yarn and needles so the ladies could knit baby blankets to donate to Mount Sinai Hospital. Maple Ridge slowly filled with laughter again. Even Mrs. Dubois, my silent roommate, one day turned to me and said, "The weather's nice today, isn't it?" The first words I'd ever heard from her. A year passed. My children carried on with their distant, crumbling lives. The money from the sale of my house had long vanished. Robert's F-150 was constantly in the shop because he couldn't afford maintenance. Jennifer's granite kitchen was behind on 2 loan payments. Michael's garage was barely staying afloat. Their calls became fewer, their voices weary. On my 74th birthday, all 3 appeared together for the first time in nearly 2 years. I knew exactly why not to celebrate, but because they needed something. Sophie told me they'd arrived. I asked her to let me meet them alone in the back garden where I grew roses and tomatoes and trimmed the grass myself. When they saw me, they froze. I was no longer the frail, broken woman they'd left behind. I wore a floral dress, my silver hair neatly cut, my face calm and bright. And the place, no longer a gloomy old folks' home, was clean, fragrant with flowers and the scent of cinnamon rolls from the kitchen. Other residents sat chatting, playing cribbage. "Mom," Jennifer gasped. "You look amazing." "Yes, sweetheart," I said with a serene smile. "I've never felt better." Robert looked around suspiciously. "This place changed ownership." "Yes," I replied softly. 2 years ago. The new owners actually seemed to care about us. They sat down, uneasy. After a few minutes of small talk, Robert complaining about gas prices, Jennifer mentioning she saw Mrs. O'Brien at Loblaws. Robert got to the point. "Mom, things aren't good. My garage is losing money. Property taxes are killing me. Jennifer's husband got laid off from Air Canada, and Michael might have to close his shop." I listened silently, calm. When they finished, I sighed. "That's unfortunate, my children." Then Jennifer, with her sweetest tone, said, "Mom, you seem so well here and you still get your CPP and OAS every month. Maybe you could help us out a little, just a small loan, so we can get back on our feet." And there it was. They hadn't come to celebrate. They'd come to beg for money, money they thought I had. I stood, walking slowly among the rose bushes, their eyes following me. "My dear children," I began, stopping before a red rose bush. "I've learned a lot these past 2 years. That it's never too late to make new friends, that a warm meal can heal a soul, and that you always reap what you sow." I turned toward them, my voice colder. "You sowed abandonment. You treated me like an old object. You threw away my memories, sold the roof that sheltered me all to feed your greed." "Mom, don't say that," Jennifer whispered, trembling. "Why not? I can say whatever I wish, because now I know my voice has value." I drew a deep breath. "You show up after 2 years of silence not to hug me, but to ask for money. The answer is no." Their faces froze. For the first time in their lives, I had told them no. "But Mom, we're your children," Robert protested. "You're obligated to help us." I laughed a loud, genuine laugh that made some of the residents turn their heads. "Obligated, Robert? My obligation to you ended the day you left me at the gates of this nursing home." I turned away. "Now, if you'll excuse me, it's almost time for our movie." "Movie?" Michael blurted. "Yes. The new owners bought us a big screen and a popcorn machine. Tonight's an old romance film, The Notebook. It's my favorite." I walked toward the main building, leaving them standing motionless in the garden. They thought the conversation was over, but they had no idea I still had one final card to play, and I was about to lay it down. The image of their faces, shocked, confused, disbelieving, gave me a deep, satisfying calm. For 2 years I had been invisible, weak, voiceless. Now my no thundered through the air. I walked slowly, deliberately, toward the glass doors. Behind me, the whispering began first low, then louder, filled with anger. I knew they wouldn't let it go easily. In their world, rejection was unacceptable. "Mom, stop right there," Robert shouted. His voice no longer pleaded, it commanded. I didn't stop. I pushed open the door and stepped into the common room, where the TV hummed softly, and Sophie stood waiting, calm as ever. My 3 children followed like a storm. Jennifer was crying not from remorse, but from wounded pride. Michael came last, his face pale. Robert caught up and grabbed my arm, not hard, but firm enough to threaten. "You can't just turn your back on us like this," he hissed. "After everything we've been through, now we're at rock bottom, and you still refuse to help? What kind of mother does that?" I pulled my arm free and answered quietly, "The kind of mother who's tired of being used, Robert." My tone was steady, quiet enough not to draw attention from the curious residents nearby. You think you've hit rock bottom? No, you're only beginning to experience life without my safety net. Safety net? He scoffed. You live off your tiny CPP check. We're the ones who've supported you. Supported me? I looked him straight in the eyes. By selling my house for a fraction of its worth, then spending the money on trucks, fancy kitchens, and empty dreams? Robert's face turned crimson. How do you even know that? I have my sources, I said, glancing at Sophie, who stood silently beside me, calm and strong. News travels fast here, especially stories about children who burn through their mother's money and then come begging for her pension. This is humiliating, Robert shouted. You're embarrassing us in front of everyone. No, Robert, I said softly. Humiliation is what you made me endure for 2 years. This, I spread my arms, gesturing to the bright, fragrant room around us. This is called consequence. You thought I was nothing, that my whole life could fit in a small suitcase, that my memories belonged in garbage bags. You underestimated me, and that was your biggest mistake. We just want a small loan, Jennifer sobbed, tears streaming down her face. We'll pay you back, I swear. We just need a little time to breathe. Time to breathe? I repeated with a bitter smile. When I came here, the only air I had smelled like disinfectant. I paused. But if you truly want a chance to start over, I can help. Their eyes lit up. They thought I had softened. I can talk to the owner of this place, I continued. They're very kind people. There might be jobs available for you. Jobs? Michael asked, puzzled. Yes, this place is growing. They need honest workers. I turned to Robert. You're a mechanic, right? The wheelchair lift here is always breaking down, and the wheelchairs constantly need repairs. Someone with your skills could be very useful. The pay isn't high, maybe $22 an hour, but it's honest work. And with your truck, you could help deliver supplies from Costco, too. Robert's face went from red to purple. Are you joking, Mom? You want me to be a maintenance worker here? Not maintenance, I said gently. Facilities coordinator. It's honest work. It may get your hands dirty, but it will clean your conscience. Then I turned to Jennifer. And you, my dear, with your beautiful kitchen and brand new wolf range, can you cook? Our head cook, Mrs. Wynne, is getting old. You could help her bake for the afternoon teas, prepare lunch. The smell of good food can warm people's hearts here. Jennifer looked down at her perfectly manicured hands, the same hands she liked to show off on Instagram. The thought of peeling potatoes and scrubbing pots made her cringe. I don't know how to cook for that many people, she said softly. You can learn, sweetheart. I learned how to live here. You can learn how to cook. Finally, I looked at Michael. My youngest, you've always loved plants. Remember those sunflowers we planted long ago? The back garden needs someone to care for it. Mow the lawn, water the flowers, plant new ones. It's peaceful, honest work far away from the smell of motor oil. The air grew heavy. They weren't just surprised, they were hurt. You've lost your mind, Robert hissed. You're crazy and cruel. You'd rather turn us into servants than lend us the money you owe us as our mother. On the contrary, I replied calmly, I owe you nothing. I'm simply offering you a chance to become decent people again, to wake up early, to work, and to care about someone other than yourselves. I looked at each of them, my voice firm. This is the only chance you'll get to make things right. Never, Robert shouted. I'd rather beg on the street than work for you. That's your choice, I said evenly. He turned to the others. Let's go. This woman isn't our mother anymore. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Jennifer turned back, her face wet with tears, half anger, half despair. How could you do this, Mom? She choked out, then ran after her brother. Michael stayed. His eyes were filled with something deeper than sadness. He didn't speak, just shook his head slightly, as if to say, I'm sorry, then quietly left. I stood still in the common room. Sophie remained by my side. The other residents who had seen everything began to approach. Mr. Sullivan put a hand on my shoulder. You're very brave, Margaret. I didn't feel brave. I felt exhausted, but also free. Sophie, I said softly, I think we can cancel movie night today. She smiled. No way, Mrs. Margaret. Today of all days you deserve a good movie and a lot of popcorn. Though, if you allow me, I'd like to make an announcement. What kind of announcement? I asked. That Maple Ridge currently has 3 job openings, and the owner would like to give priority to anyone who truly needs a second chance. I laughed from deep within. No need, Sophie. Whoever needs to learn their lesson will eventually find their way back. Life went on. Robert and Jennifer stopped calling. My old neighbor, Mrs. O'Brien, still phoned from time to time, sharing news. She said Robert had to sell his F-150 to pay off debts, and Jennifer, with her unemployed husband, was now baking squares for the neighbors in that same dream kitchen. Ironically, she was doing exactly what I had suggested, only this time out of desperation, not choice. Then, one Tuesday morning, something unexpected happened. I was pruning the roses in the garden when I noticed a figure by the back gate. It was Michael. He stood there, hands in his pockets, Carhartt jacket wrinkled, looking as if he'd aged 10 years in a week. I stayed silent, trimming the flowers. After nearly 10 minutes, he opened the gate and stepped inside. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, son." He looked at my hands, at the pruning shears. "You really love gardening, eh?" "Always have," I said. "It calms the soul." We were silent for a moment, with only the sound of shears clipping dry branches. "Mom," his voice trembled. "I closed the shop." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said gently. "It's all right. I was never much of a businessman, just a dreamer who thought money could fix everything." He nudged a small pebble with his boot. "I came to ask if your job offer still stands." I stopped and looked straight into his eyes. There was no pride, no anger, only weariness and a faint spark of hope. "Which position are you applying for?" I asked seriously. He gave a faint, sad smile. "Guess the gardener." I handed him the shears. "Then you can start with that flower bed. The weeds are choking the black-eyed Susans." Michael took the shears, his hands trembling. He looked at the tool, then at me, eyes glistening. "Thank you, Mom." "Don't thank me yet," I said. "It's hard work, and the pay is modest, $20 an hour. You'll have to prove yourself not to me, but to yourself." He nodded and began working slowly, carefully clearing each weed around the flowers. I watched him, and my heart softened. My youngest son was finally beginning to reap what he had sown, and for the first time in years, I believed this harvest could be good. I don't know what awaits Robert and Jennifer. Maybe life will teach them the lessons I couldn't, or maybe not. But one thing I know for sure, my story isn't about revenge. It's about respect. Respect that I once lost and had to reclaim the hard way. I once thought I had lost everything: my home, my faith, and my children's love. But time has taught me this. Sometimes you have to lose everything to learn how to stand up for yourself. I didn't seek revenge. I only wanted my children to understand that a mother's love isn't an unlimited credit card to withdraw from forever. It's a gift, and like any gift, it must be cherished. Now, every morning when I walk into the garden and see Michael bending over the flowers, tending them with care, I feel peace in my heart. Because maybe, in silence, we're both learning how to love again in a way that's mature, balanced, and real. Have you ever found yourself in my place, hurt by the very people you love most? Would you choose forgiveness, or would you walk away to find yourself again? Share your thoughts in the comments, because maybe your story will be the warmth someone out there needs. And if you'd like to keep hearing stories like this about family, love, and the lessons life gives us late but deep, stay with me. Because sometimes just one story is enough to make us see our whole life differently. From Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is Margaret Patterson's story. May it travel far and wide across this great country, from Vancouver Island to Newfoundland, reminding us all that a mother's love deserves respect, not exploitation.